Keegan, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me, James.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. Can we start, for those that don't know who you are, can you explain a little bit about your life, your background, and how you help people, what your mission is?
My name's Keegan Hirst. I am a ex-professional rugby league player. I came out in 2015 when I was 27 years old, so the middle of my career. Played the rest of my career, and throughout that time, kind of came to terms with my own sexuality and what that meant to be gay. And I think people, when I came out, it was quite a big news story, and I think people think that when you come out, you're a fully fledged gay. And well, that certainly wasn't my experience. I don't know if that's anybody else's, but it certainly hasn't been mine and lots of people that I've spoken to. And so over that time of still playing and getting my head around what it means to be a gay man and learning, having what I call my gay education, and learning our history and things like that. I then started getting into coaching, and I realized that, after lots of therapy, lots of coaching, lots of mentors and a very good support network, it took me a very long time to become what I would call an unapologetic man, being me without sanitizing myself or making myself more palatable or having to feel that I have to explain myself. And so that has then become my mission, is to help other gay men become unapologetic about who they are. And that doesn't mean it can, I feel like sometimes it can stray into like manosphere wording, that you should just do what you want to do and never apologize. And that's not what it is at all. It's about being able to be completely comfortable with who you are, what your wants, desires, needs are, to be able to communicate them, to be able to take up space, and not apologize for doing that. And obviously with that comes, that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and also being okay with that. I think that's something that, in my own experience as a gay man and working with gay men over the years, I feel like a lot of us have felt that to be able to be loved, we need to be able to produce something, and we need to be able to be worthy of it. We need to, there are conditions to be met to be loved. And obviously that shouldn't be the case. And that's something that we have to decondition ourselves of, certainly something I've had to decondition myself of. And I think part of that is getting away from people pleasing and wanting everybody to be okay at the cost of our own health and sanity. So that is my mission, is to help people be an unapologetic man, be unapologetically themselves, and to be the, I know it sounds a bit pithy sometimes, but to be the very best version of themselves.
Sure. And so in your experience, would you say that you haven't felt, maybe in sport, for example, that you could be unapologetically yourself? Did you know about your sexual orientation whilst you were playing rugby? Tell me a bit more about being,
Sure.
in your skin in the sporting world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know I don't have much of an accent, but I'm,
like maybe a slight hint of one. Yeah,
a slight hint of a
twang.
Of a West Yorkshire accent. So I grew up in a small town called Batley. The most famous thing to come out of Batley is Fox's Biscuits and Robert Palmer. So,
I love Fox's Biscuits.
Don't we all? So it's a small town, West Yorkshire. I grew up, I was born late 80s, so grew up through the 90s. Very small town mentality. Don't make waves, stay in line, like the song from Shrek. And it was, very much that. Don't be different. Don't be different. Fit in, conform.
Okay.
That was very, very much how I was brought up. And you should be grateful, if you get a job and go on holiday once a year. Don't stick your head above the parapet. So there was that. Was very much the kind of environment that I grew up in. Rugby. Do you know what? Rugby is a very difficult one. I probably knew that I was gay when I was 13, when people were talking about Nuts and Zoo magazines, and they were talking about Kelly Brooks and Nell McAndrew, and they asked me who I fancied, and I didn't know any girls' names because I didn't fancy them. I said Carol Vorderman because I used to watch Countdown. So
I mean, she's a very attractive lady.
very, very, yeah, very, very. But I think that when I kind of got laughed at for that, I think that was a shot across the bows that, you know, you need to fit in here.
Right.
And, you know, I had girlfriends and things like that growing up. And I always remember my mum saying, you know, as you go through puberty, you'll experience lots of different things and it's a strange time and blah, blah, blah. So I thought maybe we all fancy boys and we're just not talking about it because, you know, that's gay, right? Literally. And it was very much in the throes of don't do that, that's gay, don't be gay, all that kind of, you know, the negative connotations of gay. So there was that side of things. I got into rugby when I was about 11 years old. It was by accident. My mum had arranged with a coach to come and pick me up. I thought I was being abducted, you know, when someone pulled up in a minibus and told me to get in. I thought this was the stranger that my mum had been talking about. But it turns out that you know, I was a big lad at school and thought I might be good at rugby. Now all you have to do in rugby is catch and run, right? Well, I couldn't do either of them. But I stuck at it. I think I was overweight as a kid. I was geeky. I'd much rather read Lord of the Rings than go and play out. And so rugby kind of very much took me out of my comfort zone. But I think it was also the first time I felt like I belonged to something that was bigger than myself, and it was my first experience of community, which has been a big part of my life. And I'm a big team player, and that's continued into what I do with GMC now. But I think it was my first experience of that, and that's why I stuck with it, because I felt like I was part of something, even though I wasn't very good. And then, you know, I stuck with it for a few years, and then puberty was very good to me. I kind of came back one summer and I could catch and I could run and I could do all those things.
Okay.
And I, you know, started getting noticed by professional teams, scholarships, academies, and, you know, eventually became a part-time athlete and then a full-time athlete. And in the throes of that, you know, at 19, I met a girl working in a bar, and we, you know, got on and did the things that, you know, 19-year-olds do. And then she was pregnant. We'd only been together 3 months, and you know, I'd had dalliances with random boy. Like, this was kind of before Grindr even existed, or maybe Grindr was just kind of coming into existence and apps and things. But I'd had, you know, the odd dalliance with a boy before that, and always felt horrendous about it, like shame and disgust and all those kind of things, and thought, well, this can't be right. So, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's just something wrong with me, or it's a phase, or whatever. She would become my wife. She got pregnant with my daughter, who was born when I was 20 years old. So, and as well, you know, my dad had never been around when I grew up, so there was certainly an element of wanting to put that right and be there for my kid. And, you know, I'd certainly not planned on having kids at 20 years old, but, you know, I think part of the mentality that I was brought up with was, you know, you make your bed, you lie in it, you deal with the consequences of your actions, and you put your big boy pants on, and you get on with it. And I feel like I was very much in that mindset that this might not have been the life that I wanted, but this is what I've got now, and I have people relying on me. And then rugby was taking off and things like that. And then before I knew it, you know, by 24, we were married. There was my son was born. We had 2 dogs. We'd bought a house that needed rebuilding from the inside out. And I was just completely preoccupied. I didn't have time to have existential thoughts about, is this what I want? Is this who I am? I had, you know, nappies to change and bills to pay and, you know, rugby training to turn up to. So I just kind of got on with it. And then as years went by, you know, things settled down a little bit, and still there's this misalignment of who I actually am and the life that I'm living. And I think that as time went on, that just got further and further and further apart. And I hated it. I hated myself for it. I felt like a fraud. I felt like, you know, even though I wasn't doing anything, I felt like I was living, you know, a double life of, I wasn't able to be honest with people. I still, you know, was attracted to men and all that kind of stuff. And you know, eventually I couldn't couldn't deal with it. So I just started drinking more, I started taking drugs, I started training more. I did anything and everything that I could do to get out of my own head. Some of it legal, some of it not, which obviously had a knock-on effect on my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my kids, my relationship with rugby and my teammates, and
right.
And then it kind of got to a point where I thought, I don't want to carry on like this. I felt like there was no other way out, and what we would call active suicidal ideation. Like I thought about taking my own life and how I was going to do it, when I was going to do it. And the only reason that I didn't do it was because of the kids, and I didn't want my kids growing up without their dad. And it wasn't until recently that I kind of thought that that I suppose there's a bit of poetry there in the thing that I grew up with, with my dad not being around and always wondering what was wrong with me and all that kind of stuff. That was the kind of thing that saved my life, actually. But it didn't stop the drinking and things like that. That just carried on, and eventually it just got to a point where things were untenable. We didn't want the kids growing up thinking this was a relationship, and we separated. And then with that separation came a bit of, for probably the first time in my life, I could kind of stop pretending,
Right.
and really have some introspection about why was I behaving like this, what was I doing, and it was quite apparent once I kind of extricated myself from that situation that I was gay. But even when I kind of accepted that, well, I don't know if accept is the right word, I certainly acknowledged it. I couldn't say the words out. I couldn't say I'm gay.
Right.
And again, probably through shame and disgust and internalized homophobia and all that kind of stuff. And then, eventually I decided that I would tell people. And I felt like I was kind of at rock bottom, to be honest. I'd love to say that it was a really bold decision. I was like, I'm going to, change the world, and I'm going to do this, and I'm bully for me. But it wasn't that. I was at rock bottom, and I just thought, what's the worst that can happen? At least I'm being honest. And, I told my wife, who was understandably upset. I told my mum, who I had to tell on the phone because she lives abroad. And I told my mum, and she told me I was a disappointment. How could I do this to her? And, all the stuff that you want to hear when you're coming out. But even then, I still felt better because I was being honest and I was doing the right thing. And then I told the guys at rugby, I told my coach. The guys at rugby I had a mixed reaction. I had, one of my mates cried, sorry you've had to go through this on your own. I had people who shook my hand, people who hugged me, people who said nothing. And then I told the coach, and I was captain at the time. And I was really worried I was just going to disappear off, because I knew, like, on a logistical level, I can't be sacked for being gay. Like, that's against the law. But, in rugby, you can, I could disappear off the team and then not get my contract renewed. Like, that could have, I was certainly, that could have happened. But my coach, God bless him, said, it doesn't matter to me if you're gay. What matters to me is you're a rugby player and you're my captain. And, I think after that, I thought, I think I'm going to be okay here. And, that meant, I'm even kind of filling up thinking about it now, because, it meant so much, and it allowed me to then kick on with what would be the rest of my life, and, chairman, and then it went public, and that was kind of the story after that. But it was, and then, as I said right at the beginning when we started, then I was being hailed as some kind of role model and brave and all this, and I felt the antithesis of that. I felt like I'd been a coward all my life, and that I'd hidden and I'd hurt people, and I felt a lot of guilt and shame, and I had to work through all that internalized homophobia and things like that, and then the self-development journey started after that.
You didn't ask for your journey to take you into the public eye in the way that it did, and for you to become a advocate, I suppose, for other people that are going through these life challenges. But it feels like it's an important part of the story that a lot of the time people make an assumption that a coming out story can be one of celebration and one of relief and freedom. But very often, actually, it's like you very eloquently described, you were in a place of despair with nothing else to lose other than, I might as well just say I've got nothing else to lose. And even though it was a story that built up from there to be really positive, it didn't, the roots weren't particularly positive. And I think that's really important to remember, especially then being thrust into the public eye in a very visible way for something that was actually incredibly personal.
Yeah, it's something I've spoken to friends and clients about over the years, and you know, at GMC we have our own psychotherapist in there, and he spoke about, you know, we've had clients come in who've not been out and then have come out, you know, through the process, I suppose, of becoming that unapologetic man that I spoke about earlier. And something that we spoke about is, rather than coming out, it's choosing to let people in. You know, just choosing to let someone see this sign. And when, you know, as gay people, we know that we do that regularly, right? You don't just do it. It's not a one and done kind of thing.
Constant throughout your whole life, I think.
Yeah. But I think certainly when I did it publicly, and I did it, you know, and I did it publicly because I'd love to tell you I got paid a load of money, but I didn't. It was purely because my coach, who did a lot of media at the time, said that they were going to run a story on it. People knew, like the team knew, and so it got out. But I'd not been to the papers or anything with it. And they were going to run a story on it, and it was he said, if I were you, I would get in front of it and kind of take ownership of it. And I was going through a divorce. I had 2 young kids, and it was the Sun and it was the Mirror that wanted to run a story on it. And he was like, I would not let the Sun get hold of it because it'll be a right mess. So I ended up speaking to the Mirror, and then it became a story that we did with them, and it ended up being front page news and all that. And to be honest, I wasn't, you know, people always think, what was that like? And to be honest, I didn't really care. Social media wasn't what it is now then. God, that makes me sound old, doesn't it? But
well, I'm right there with you, Keegan. Don't you worry about that.
You know what I mean? Like Twitter was, I was kind of on Twitter, but I don't even think I had Instagram. And so it was, I didn't care if, you know, John in Kent knew that I was like, what did it matter to me? It didn't matter to me. You know, it mattered that the people in my life knew. But then, you know, I start getting phone calls and messages from, you know, famous people and all that. And that in and of itself, I suppose, that was quite intoxicating in that, oh, you know, now I'm getting all this recognition, whereas I've literally gone from being in the shadows to the opposite of that. And that was quite, it was surreal. It was a wild few years. I'm glad that I had rugby and the friends around me that I did, because they certainly kept me grounded. I'm sure they, you know, it would have been very easy to go down a rabbit hole and end up in all sorts of kind of places and scenarios that I certainly, you know, wouldn't want to be in. But then, you know, doing these interviews is, you know, what's it like being a role model and what do you have to say? And, you know, I was being interviewed about what's it like to be a role model, and I didn't even know what Stonewall was then, or who people like Marsha P. Johnson were, or you know, Peter.
Well, how would you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I was like, and when I did find out more about our history and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, it was just like, it's, you know, more by luck than judgment that I find myself in this position, and but I also felt a level of responsibility as well, like, because rugby had been rugby has been good to me, and, you know, the fact that I have any kind of platform whatsoever is because I was a rugby player who happened to be gay, and so I felt that there was a level of responsibility with that, and I think because I'd come so close to taking my own life and how miserable I'd been for parts of my life, I thought that I didn't want anybody else to experience that. And if there was anything that I could do, whether that was, you know, I suppose growing into my own skin in a very public way and sharing things and trying to be authentic and vulnerable. But, you know, as a therapist, James, you'll know there's a big difference between being vulnerable and then just dumping all your shit in publicly, which is, you know, very unhealthy. So I think, you know, I'm very grateful that, you know, I took it upon myself to do. You know, I think back to that version of me that decided to do therapy and decided to pick up self-help books and decided to invest in themselves. Like I'm very grateful to that version of me that was, not too proud to ask for help and things like that. And that's, certainly online, my profile has grown a lot more than since finishing rugby, that rather than it did when I played it. And I think it's because I've tried to be honest and open and vulnerable. And not everybody agrees with everything I say. And
Well, never
I'm
mind.
a flawed individual as much as anybody else. But
of course,
I try. I try to. I try to show a version of what life can be. And I'm not saying that my life is, everybody should aspire to have my life or one like it, but I can honestly say that my life is mine and not somebody else's, or I don't do, obviously I have responsibilities and things like that, but I do things that I want to do with my life. And I know there's, for a big part of it, I couldn't say that.
Yeah.
And that's I think that, you spoke about mission earlier. I think if something that I always want to try and get across to people is that you have agency. You can change your life, and it's not easy, and it's not plain sailing, and it's not always, there are things and relationships and people and opportunities that go by the wayside, but you don't have to stay stuck. And I felt I was a victim of that. It was the world's fault, and unlucky me, and the things things happened to me that weren't my fault, but sorting my own life out was my responsibility. And I certainly didn't do that in a perfect way, but I'd like to think that eventually I've kind of got around to it. So I think that that's something that I'm really passionate about, is trying to empower people to do that.
What do you think gets in the way for people, in your opinion, from them being able to connect to their agency, to remember they have agency and move into a more empowered sense of self? What are the blocks do you think people get stuck in?
I think a lot of it boils down to our root fears as human beings, like rejection, the fear of being alone. I think that's a big one, right? That we will be cast aside by the people that we love, and that it's difficult to make new friends and things like that. And it is, and as someone who's speaking here who doesn't speak to either of their parents, that's, I don't suppose that is a nice thing. And yet I wouldn't swap the setup that I have for anything. The friends that I've got, my chosen family, as I've had Christmas dinner with my friends for the last 10 years, and they've been the best Christmases of my life. And I think it's a fear of uncertainty, right? There's this idea that you don't let go, a monkey doesn't let go of one branch until it's got hold of the other. And this kind of claiming your identity or whoever and stepping into that, there is uncertainty around it. How will I be perceived? How will I be, what will be the reaction? What will come of that? What's the knock-on effect? And that is, I think that is, that fear of the unknown. You look at so many people who, they stay overweight because they don't know how someone's going to react when they lose weight, or the friends and family say don't lose weight, or people stay in relationships that are not good for them, in jobs that they hate, because better the devil you know, right? And I think it's that level of uncertainty, because people talk about comfort zones, but I feel like comfort is the wrong word. Because it's not comfortable. It's just familiar. It's a familiar zone. And I know this, and I know, even if this partner that I'm with, who's horrible to me and doesn't treat me well, at least I know they're there. At least I know how they're going to react. At least I know what that's going to look like. And I think a big part of it is that uncertainty, and stepping into that. I think that is probably the biggest driver that stops people. Is the grass greener? Will it be better? Is it worth the risk? In my experience personally, and all the people that I've coached, and I've coached hundreds of people now over the last 6 years with GMC. Don't get me wrong, like there are people who've relationships have gone by the wayside, friendships, careers, jobs, and every single person has gone, I'm so glad that I did it. While you're going through it, it's scary, and and that's the thing, right? So I think that's the big thing that keeps people stuck.
And it feels like that shaped your message around being an unapologetic man or unapologetic gay man, because there's this how you describe your experiences is that you've let other people or society shape you, whereas if you then allow you to shape you and you help others to shape themselves, they're happier for it. So it's not, you said earlier, like about the manosphere, it's not like, it's not a toxic masculinity thing, but it's really about helping people to step into their authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about the community side of things, because I think it's so much easier to do when you don't do it on your own, or you're doing it with somebody else who's going through a similar thing. You go, I'm struggling with this relationship or this concern or this, and this other person goes, me too, I'm struggling with it. Let's do it together. Or I'm a little bit further on than you and I know how you're feeling, but trust me, if you do this, you're going to get this. Or someone who's a little bit further back than you and you go, do you know what? I was where that you are, a couple of months ago. And I can tell you that, I'm here now, and it's and that's why I think change is really hard, imposing yourself, going from, like you said there, James, the world shaping you and the world imposing itself on you, to you imposing yourself on the world. And again, I don't mean in an aggressive, domineering kind of way. I mean in just, this is me taking up my space, what I'm, allowed to step into. I think when you do that with other people and there's a shared sense of, similar goals, similar aspirations, similar challenges, and a common goal that we are doing something for ourselves, but we're doing it together. And almost like a proving ground for that new version of you, because if there is this level of uncertainty, and maybe you do want to be a little bit more assertive, or you do want to ask for things, maybe if you're in a community, then you can almost practice that, and you're going to have a safe space to be able to do that and go, oh, it's like trying some new shoes on. Yeah, these are okay. This is work before you go into, the big wide world. And I think, and when I talk about community, I think community is made up of peers, which is obviously people who are going through similar things to you, and then some kind of elders, maybe, peers who are a bit further on than you, and then maybe, there's mentors in there, whether they're mentors, coaches, teachers, whatever they may be, who have kind of completed the journey that you're looking to do, and then are able to pass the baton, for want of a better phrase. I think when you're part of a community of that, then you can stumble and you can get things wrong, and it's not always, and don't get me wrong, like I'm not talking, it's not some kind of utopia, these communities that exist, whether I'm talking about rugby,
they're made up of people, right? We're all flawed to some extent.
Exactly, right? So it's not utopia, but it's certainly a lot better than doing it on your own. And I am very grateful, and I'm very open that, sometimes when I talk about my story and people say, oh, you're brave and you this and you that, everything that I've ever achieved has been, off the back of other people. And, I suppose is that saying, standing on the shoulders of giants and all that kind of stuff. I have been sometimes dragged kicking and screaming towards progress. And I've had people who've believed in me before I've believed in myself. I've had people who've, put an arm around me when I've needed it. People who give me a kick up the backside when I've needed it. And whether that's been rugby, whether that's been my own personal development, GMC, whatever it is, it's because of the community aspect of it that I've been able to do what I've done. And that's why I think, yes, it's difficult. So don't do it on your own. There's that African proverb, right? If you want to go fast, go on your own. If you want to go far, go together.
Nice.
I feel that's very true.
I've just got in my head, it takes a village, people.
It does take a village, and we live in this world now where people are talking about loneliness, and people want a village, but they don't want to be villagers, right? They don't want to commune, and they don't want to be inconvenienced, and they don't want to, they just want to take and be voyeurs. That I think social media has taught us to become almost voyeuristic and just watch and take rather than give and share. And that's why. Yeah, I absolutely, it really does take a village, but it takes a village of people who are willing to be villagers, I think.
Yeah, and God Love the Village People, the band too, right? Because that's I love the gay reference when I say that.
Giant,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely. So obviously very passionate about community, and I feel like community in many ways needs to be more of a focus for people, because I feel it's been in decline for many years for whatever reason. But does GMC, that your mission, does that include a community for people? So the people you're helping, do they then connect with each other as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah? So like we have our own app. People can connect and commune on this. So we have clients all over the world. So we have clients UK, US, Canada, Australia, across Europe. And so we have there's the online element where we do group calls. We have the group where people can connect. They can connect with each other one-on-one. But we also do in-person events as well. So this year, by the end of this year, we'll have done 10 events across England, Scotland, Canada, and the US. And Wales as well. We've just had an event in Wales as well. So we'll have had 10 opportunities for people to get together that are organised by GMC, but also, people connect. And, we have quite a big contingent on the East Coast of America, New York, all the way down to like Washington, Philadelphia, all down to Georgia. And those guys sometimes get together like of their own volition. So, people make friends that, when people graduate from GMC or they want to go on their own, and their friendships remain. And that's something that I always love seeing when people are getting together, and, the friendships were forged by going through, GMC together or challenges together. So yeah, it's, to be honest, the community element of GMC is probably what I'm most proud of. Being able to bring people together in a room. Last year we're doing it again this year. A retreat down in Cornwall. We had clients coming from all over, spending time together, really sharing and opening up. And with guys who were taking the retreat. Last year we did an event in Chicago. We've just done one in LA. We're doing one in Montreal this year, and getting people to literally fly internationally to come and spend time together is, something that I'm very grateful for, and I'm very proud of.
You should be proud of it. It sounds fantastic, and yeah, the way that people can connect. They've got something in common, but then they forge their own relationships outside of that as well. Yeah, that just grows and grows and grows. I mean, you're building a community across the world, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's I think as well, we've used the word community a lot as well. I think as well, I see this a lot on the internet. People can be quite disparaging about the gay community, and I'm doing it in air quotes, because I think I felt when when I came out, there's this gay community, and it's going to be like this nirvana where we all skip and get on, and everybody's, we're all gay, so we're all in the same boat, right? And again, it's not made up of human beings; it's just made up of lovely people who want to get on and don't have any trauma and baggage and things like that. But obviously I was disabused of that quite quickly, but I think this idea of a gay community doesn't exist in the, I'm sure in the 70s and 80s in London, when there was an actual community of people that got together and communed, and other cities, obviously, around the world, there was a community. But you just go on the internet, there's loads of us. There's just gay people, and there are, I suppose, subsections of that, and people have bad experiences of one, and then they complain about it, and that kind of colours their whole perception of gay people and the gay experience and all that kind of stuff. And so I try, where possible, you know, when I'm talking about GMC and the community, and
Yeah.
you know, again, to just paint community in a positive light, because again, you know, I think it's easy to be lazy with our words, and people go, the gay community, they don't mean gay community, they mean they went to a party once and people were rude, and so the gay community is bad. And I'm like,
Oh, I see. Okay, so the negative experiences from people that are using the term gay community, almost using it in a way that's not a reflection of the genuine gay community. It's like some individuals have shaped negatively someone else's opinion, but that doesn't speak for the whole community.
yeah, I don't think any one person can speak for the whole community, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You can speak for a community within that, whether it's, you know, a gay hiking club, a gay book club, a gay circuit party, whatever it is. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you know, you can have things within that, but I think it's important that we specific with our language and try to get things right, which I know in the world of social media and, you know, fake news and rage baiting and all that kind of stuff, it's a little bit more difficult to do. But I think
it's context, isn't it? People are so quick to jump on language and say that people shouldn't say that or should say this. But actually, if it's taken out of context, that's really important to acknowledge, because you need the whole conversation. And language, we do our best with language, but language are just symbols, really. We have to apply meaning to them. So if somebody then gets offended, for example, but it was taken out of context, it's like, well, let's just reshape everything for a second and see. Because you can't, you know, people will misunderstand one another, but it doesn't speak for everyone. It certainly doesn't mean that everyone holds the same opinion.
Yeah.
But we should be able to have a conversation about community, which is about connection, respect, love, and enjoying the company of others. But there are, of course, going to be shadow sides to community, which people experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, isn't it? There's light and shade, there's good and bad, there's
of course
nuance, there's like you said, James, we are humans, and we're, you know, none of us are perfect and make mistakes, and so, you know, there's all sorts of things to consider with that. But I think people are, again, like, people often look for a quick fix, and people look for a short, simple answer, and you know, as useful as that can be, and I do, you know, I often, clients will tell me that they appreciate that I'm quite direct, and which is nice, I think, because, you know, I'm a big believer in empathy and compassion and understanding and things like that. There's certainly things that I wasn't shown growing up, and, you know, rugby's definitely changed a lot now with how we look after players and things, but it certainly wasn't compassionate and empathetic when I was coming through. And, you know, you don't be soft, don't be mentally weak, all that kind of language was used. So that has certainly taught me a lot about, you learn a lot. I think I've certainly learned a lot more from the bad coaches that I had than from the good ones, about how to help people and support people and things like that.
And what not to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so compassion and empathy and understanding are incredibly important. But at some point, the rubber does have to meet the road. And we do have to, you know, we can sit and discuss, well, there's this and there's this trauma. And I mean, I'm not talking about trauma because I'm not a therapist, but, you know, when people come and they talk about, this is the reason that I do this, and there's this, you know, people are so self-aware, and they can intellectualize and rationalize all their problems and challenges and quirks and things like that. But at some point, if you want to change, it's action. And I think that's what, why sometimes, certainly, I get a little bit of backlash on, you know, socials and things. I spoke quite recently about, you know, people being lonely and talking about loneliness. And I was talking about, I think a big challenge that people have is that we have a bit of a sit on your ass and complain epidemic, and people would rather sit and moan than, do you know what, go out and meet someone, go to a club, go to a yoga class, go to a whatever. And of course that's sweeping, and there are people with genuine issues that can't just do that. And but, you know, that I'm just talking in a generalization.
Sure.
But that's the, you know, that's the kind of you have to take action, right? And that's something that I'm very passionate about, is the doing, and deal with. You can't learn to swim without getting in the water. That's something that I say to clients all the time. You can read all the books on swimming, on technique and breathing and everything, but until you actually get in the water, you will never learn how to swim. And that's, I think that's something that's really, people would rather sit on the sidelines and talk death than just, getting in the thick of it.
It's really important, because I can attest to the fact that I've done a lot of therapy. I've read a lot of self-help books. I have sometimes lost myself in the self-help world and then forgotten to take action. So I'm so self-aware, and then I've not done anything.
Another form of avoidance, right?
You can lose yourself in it. So I really get what you're saying. It's not about saying you can't talk about your feelings, you can't be understood, and that people can support you and listen to you and show empathy and compassion, but you've got to couple it with action. Otherwise, absolutely. I don't think anything really changes for the better. So there is a dark side, a shadow side to being so self-aware, if you forget to add the action bit in, which I've done many times. But when I have done that, I've got, there it is. The two combined is a superpower, really.
Absolutely, yeah.
But people forget the action.
I always talk about implement fast. Don't try to implement correctly or perfectly. Good is perfect is the enemy of done, right? So it's just getting things done in some semblance that you can go, right, we can fix it on the run. We can make changes while we're on the move, but you just have to get started at some point.
Absolutely.
And I think, again, that's a challenge that I've often bumped into with, and don't get me wrong, I know everybody can struggle with perfectionism, but again, it's something that I feel is very prevalent among gay men, because of this need to be perceived as perfect, because we have to earn our love and all, things that we're conditioned when we're younger, that we have to be valuable, we have to be useful, we have to be perfect, because if there's anything that could, detract from that, then, maybe we appear less lovable, because we're taught by society that we are less than and not enough as is. So we have to overcompensate. And so that this level of perfectionism is, it's one of the big things that I talk to the guys about a lot, is just getting things done and being okay with not being perfect, and, and everything not going to plan, and
get messy.
Exactly. It's that, because everybody, then we have this all or nothing. I'll start the diet on Monday. I'll start therapy on Monday. I'll do this I'll start dating.
I love that it's always on a Monday.
It's always on a Monday, the worst day to do things.
Never on a Wednesday or like a Thursday. It's always on a Monday. But it's dangerous, isn't it, to fall into that thinking?
And because when people say all or nothing, let's face it, it's usually nothing. Like it's nothing 90% of the time, and all for a very small amount of time.
That's very true.
I'm just like, it's better to be 70%. If you think about it, in whatever field, whether it's your physique, your job, your relationship, finances, whatever, who's going to go further? The person who's 100% for 2 months, or the person that's 70% for 3 years? It's a no-brainer, right? So, it's something is better than nothing.
Absolutely.
Apart from when you're talking about STIs.
Well, of course not everything is better. Some things are definitely worse, which is very important to remember. But if you were able to summarize, if you can, because I know this is a big question, but if you could summarize at least some of what you've learnt that you would like people to know across your entire journey, from being a professional athlete to being a coach, mental health ups and downs throughout your life, what wisdom have you derived that you think, people really need to hear this, because it applies to every human being?
You don't need to be the best. You don't need God-given talent or ability. I played rugby, and I played at a higher level than people that were better rugby players than me, hands down. And the reason that I did that was because I listened, I implemented, I asked for help, and I didn't let my ego get in the way. And that has been the same with building a business, building relationships. Ask for help. If you can't get the help for free, pay for it. Don't do things on your own, and just take action. Just have a growth mindset. There's a fantastic book, and it's not that maybe people want to be giving people more books to read, but if I could say to someone, read one book, it would be a book called Growth by Caroline Dweck. It's about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, and I very much used to have a fixed mindset that this is me, this is my place in life, and this is how it is, versus a growth mindset that you do have power, you can make your life different, and there's lots of ways to do that, as I've said: mentoring, coaching, community, implementation, feedback. There's all things that fall into that, but you can change your life. It might not be slow, it might not be glamorous, it might not be done tomorrow, but it's my life. I really like my life. I can look in a mirror and I can say I really like the person that looks back at me. I like the relationships that I have, especially the one that I have with myself. My kids are happy. Is my life perfect? Absolutely not. Do I have challenges? 100%. Do I have better and worse days? Of course I do. But it's infinitely better than it was even 10 years ago when 11 years ago now when I came out. So you can change. You can change. You're not stuck.
Change is possible.
Change is possible. 100%.
So with that in mind, tell people how they can get in touch with your mission with GMC, what's on offer for people. And I believe there's something new emerging. I could be wrong, but is there an exciting new development that's soon to be announced? But I don't know if you can say anything about that. If I just put that on you, then we can move on. But yeah, I want to know, but people I'm sure will be very keen to know what's coming with GMC and also what is also available.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you can find me at Keegan Hirst on all socials basically, but Instagram is kind of where I operate the most. At Game Man's Coaching is where you can see the GMC stuff, what we're about, where we're at. We are doing for the first time, we're doing normally the events that we do are for GMC members, but for the first time in June in London, we're doing an event for non-GMC members, nice. And we're going to be discussing essentially the path of going from being an apologetic man to an unapologetic man, so people can come, network, connect. Obviously, they'll be fed, and then they'll leave with action steps and ways that they can implement, and not just come feeling inspired and motivated and then not be able to do anything. They're going to leave with action steps. So that's going to be on the 20th of June in Stratford. It's a fantastic venue down there. We went there last year with the GMC guys, and so I'm really excited about that. So again, if you're interested in that, you can contact me on my Instagram or Facebook or wherever you are, and I'll find it there.
And your plans for growth with GMC, are there things in the pipeline?
I think we're just looking to continue to build the community, and to grow. Like I said, we've got lots of members all across the world now, and we have US coaches, we have a US psychotherapist, we have a UK-based psychotherapist, physiotherapist. We have a fantastic team, and there's coaches as well. So we're just looking to add to the community and help people grow and kind of spread the mission.
I love that. So there's plenty for people to get involved with. Isn't there?
There's plenty to be going on with, and we have lots of GMC events coming up this year. Like I said, we've got the retreat in August, which is in Cornwall. It's a beautiful part of the world. We've got our Montreal event in September, and then we are in Manchester early December for our kind of end of year get together and celebration and social. So there's still plenty to go at, as well as the June event.
Absolutely. I shall make sure all of that, as best I can, is in the show notes. But I just want to thank you very much for sharing so candidly your personal story, the way that you help people. It seems that it comes from an incredibly personal place, and you have changed a lot from where you started out. And I just want to thank you on behalf of everyone that you help for everything that you contribute. And yeah, I look forward to seeing where this goes. But yeah, what an amazing offering you have for people in terms of helping them be inspired to become the best versions of themselves that they can be.
Cheers, mate. I appreciate that. And thank you for having me and letting me waffle at you for an hour.
You're very welcome.